Red and blue lights flickered across Nia Brooks' terrified face as she stood outside her sleek black SUV, arms raised, surrounded by 3 white officers. Her trunk was open, fundraiser materials and personal belongings scattered across the pavement like trash. Officer Harris, sneering, leaned in close. "What else you hiding, sweetheart?" he taunted, hand resting near his holstered taser. Heart pounding, Nia asked, "Can I call my husband?" Harris chuckled darkly. "Only if you want to spend the night in jail." But Nia called anyway. Detective Malcolm Brooks. Minutes later, screeching, tires shattered the tension. A black Dodge Charger roared up. Malcolm stepped out, badge gleaming under the streetlight, eyes burning with fury. "Step away from my wife now." Everything froze. But how did it come to this? Let's rewind 24 hours earlier. Before we dive into the story, tell me where you're watching from. And if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe to catch more powerful stories like this. The sun rose lazily over Atlanta, casting long golden streaks across the quiet streets of the Cascade Heights neighborhood. Inside their cozy brick home, Nia Brooks sipped coffee while reviewing the final checklist for the Atlanta Youth Empowerment Gala, an event she'd spent the last 6 months organizing. The gala aimed to fund after-school programs for underprivileged kids, tutoring, arts, sports, things Nia never had growing up but believed could change a child's future. Her phone buzzed. "Morning, beautiful." Malcolm's deep voice rumbled through the speaker. "Big day, huh?" "Biggest one yet," Nia replied, smiling as she glanced at the neat stacks of promotional brochures, registration forms, and banners by the door. "You coming tonight, Detective Brooks? Or is Atlanta's finest too busy chasing bad guys?" Malcolm chuckled. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll finish my shift by 6 and meet you there. Promise." Nia hung up, warmth spreading through her chest. Malcolm had been her rock, especially after his recent promotion to detective sergeant. It was a big step for any cop, but for a black man in the Atlanta Police Department, it was monumental. Malcolm wore his badge with pride, determined to protect and serve fairly, fighting against the very biases that had nearly derailed his own life more than once. By noon, the community center was buzzing with activity. Volunteers, mostly young adults from the neighborhoods Nia served, hurried back and forth, setting up tables, hanging streamers, and organizing raffle prizes. Kids chased each other across the gym floor while their parents signed up for workshops on job readiness and financial literacy. The air smelled of fried chicken, buttered cornbread, and peach cobbler from the local caterers Nia had hired. Everything was perfect, or almost perfect. As Nia directed a group of teens unloading supplies, from her black SUV, her neighbor, Mr. Cartwright, shuffled past with his golden retriever. The retired insurance adjuster, white and perpetually annoyed, never missed an opportunity to remind Nia that this neighborhood used to be quiet until they started moving in. Today was no different. He eyed the SUV, shiny, spotless, and undeniably expensive, with thinly veiled disdain. "Fancy ride," he muttered, stopping on the sidewalk. "Guess charity pays better than it used to." Nia froze, breath catching. She turned slowly, forcing a polite smile. "Morning, Mr. Cartwright. Actually, it doesn't pay much at all, but hard work does." His eyes narrowed, flicking from her to the teenagers unloading boxes. "Hard work, huh? Back in my day, we didn't need handouts to get by." Nia's smile didn't falter, but inside, anger simmered. She'd heard it all before. The handout narrative, the insinuation that black success could only come from charity, not merit. Well, it's not about handouts. It's about giving kids a fair shot. "Enjoy your walk." Cartwright grunted and tugged his dog along. One of the teens, Maya, whispered, "Why's he always got something slick to say?" Nia sighed. "Because some people hate seeing others rise. Ignore him. We've got work to do." The gala itself was flawless. The keynote speaker, a former student who now ran her own business, brought the crowd to tears. Donations poured in, surpassing Nia's goal by nearly 20%. They had enough to fund 2 full programs for the upcoming school year. When the last guest left and the volunteers began cleaning up, Nia leaned against her SUV, exhaustion and pride mingling in equal measure. Her phone buzzed. "Malcolm," she answered, already grinning. Detective Brooks, you missed one hell of a night. Don't hate me, Malcolm sighed. Got pulled into a late case. I'm still at the precinct. Home by 10, though. Dinner's on me. Nia shook her head, smiling. You're lucky you're cute. Be safe, Mal. Always. The line clicked off. By the time Nia locked the community center and headed home, the city had settled into the quiet hum of late evening. Her SUV glided through familiar streets, rows of modest houses with manicured lawns. Kids' bikes tipped over near driveways, porch lights casting soft halos against brick facades. It was the kind of neighborhood Nia had worked her whole life to reach. Safe, stable, welcoming. Or so she thought. Because as she turned onto Peachtree Terrace, her shortcut home, something shifted. The street, usually empty this time of night, felt off. Shadows stretched longer, streetlights flickered, casting jittery beams across the road, and in her rearview mirror she saw it, a white patrol car trailing her without lights or sirens. Just following. Nia frowned, checking her speedometer. 34 miles per hour in a 35 zone. No stops skipped, no phone in hand, seatbelt on, everything by the book. Probably just heading the same way, she muttered, trying to shake the unease creeping up her spine. But block after block, turn after turn, the patrol car stayed glued to her bumper. When Nia switched lanes, so did they. When she slowed, they slowed. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. Not tonight. Not after everything. At the next red light, she pulled into a well-lit gas station, hoping the cruiser would pass. It didn't. The lights flashed. Red, blue, accusing. Nia's heart dropped. Why? She pulled to the curb, hand already reaching for her wallet. Stay calm, stay visible, don't give them a reason. A tall white officer, Harris according to his badge, approached, hand resting on his gun. His partner, Reed, hung back near. The patrol car, arms crossed. Nia rolled down the window, forcing a polite smile. Good evening, officer. Is there a problem? Harris didn't smile back. License and registration. No explanation. No small talk. Nia blinked, tension knotting her stomach. May I ask why I'm being stopped? Harris leaned closer, breath sour with coffee and arrogance. Suspicious activity. Vehicle matching a bolo for recent thefts. Her breath caught. A black SUV was suspicious now? In her neighborhood, wearing an evening gown from the gala. The absurdity hit like a slap, but Nia swallowed her frustration, reminding herself, don't escalate, just get home. I just left the Cascade Community Center. There must be a mistake. Harris's eyes narrowed. Step out of the vehicle, ma'am. Nia froze. Excuse me. I've done nothing wrong. Are you detaining me? Harris's hand shifted closer to his taser. I said step out. Or do you want to add resisting arrest to the list? That's when the second cruiser pulled up, lights flashing. Two more officers. Clay, older with graying hair and a permanent, Scowl and Reed, younger and jittery, emerged, hands hovering near their belts. Three officers, one woman. On a quiet street in a safe neighborhood. This wasn't routine. This was personal. Nia's pulse pounded in her ears. Her SUV, her success, her mere presence had marked her as a threat. And she knew exactly how these stories usually ended. Okay, she murmured, unbuckling her seatbelt with deliberate slowness. I'm complying, but I'd like to know why I'm being treated this way. Harris smirked. You people always got questions, you people. The words hit harder than any slap. As Nia stepped out, hands visible, Harris circled her like a predator. Any weapons, drugs, or stolen goods in the vehicle? Her brows knitted. Of course not. I'm coming from a charity event. Stay where? I can see you, Harris snapped, ignoring her words as he signaled Reed. Without warning, Reed popped the trunk and began rifling through the neatly packed boxes from the gala, brochures, tablecloths, leftover decorations, tossing them aside, like garbage. Hey, Nia protested, stepping forward. You can't search my car without consent or probable cause. Clay chuckled coldly. Probable cause? Your attitude's enough for me. The injustice boiled over. Nia glanced at her phone, still sitting in the cup holder. If she could just call Malcolm. Hands where I can see them, Harris barked, catching her glance. His hand hovered near his taser. Make a move, and you'll regret it. Nia froze, throat tight with suppressed rage and fear. One wrong word, one misinterpreted gesture, and she'd become another headline, another name on a growing list. "I'm not resisting," she said, voice trembling. "I just want to call my husband," Harris sneered. "Do that after we're done here." As Reed emerged from the trunk holding a stack of brochures like contraband, Clay muttered, "Funny, you people always got some charity angle, don't you?" "You people." Again, Nia bit her tongue until she tasted blood. Reacting meant escalation. Escalation meant danger. Harris nodded toward the SUV. "Run her plates. Let's see what else she's hiding." As Reed stepped away to radio dispatch, Nia stood, motionless, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Every muscle screamed to flee, but she knew better. Running wasn't an option, not for someone like her. Her SUV, once a symbol of success and independence, now sat bathed in harsh white light, transformed into a crime scene without a crime. Her dignity, shredded piece by piece under the thin veil of procedure. Her phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. Malcolm, thank God. Nia inhaled sharply. "May I retrieve my phone to call my husband now?" Her voice was clipped, but controlled. Harris exchanged a glance with Clay. The older officer shrugged. "No sudden moves, lady." Carefully, Nia leaned into the car and grabbed the phone. The officer's hands tensed near their weapons, like she was about to pull a gun instead of a lifeline. Absurd. Terrifying. Familiar. Her fingers trembled as she pressed Malcolm's contact. He picked up immediately. "Nia, you okay? I've been calling." She didn't wait for pleasantries. "Malcolm, I'm pulled over. They're searching my car without cause. I need you here. Now." Silence. Then Malcolm's voice, sharp and commanding. "Where are you?" Nia rattled off the cross street, voice cracking. "Please, hurry." As she ended the call, she caught Harris watching her more closely now, posture stiffening. He didn't know who she'd called, but something about her sudden confidence unsettled him. Minutes crawled by like hours. Nia stood her ground, arms crossed, chin high, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. Cars passed slowly, drivers rubbernecking but not stopping. No one ever stopped. And then in the distance, an engine growled. Low, deliberate. A black Dodge Charger rolled up, sleek and purposeful, headlights slicing through the night. The driver's door swung open, and Malcolm Brooks stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, radiating authority in his detective sergeant uniform. His badge gleamed under the streetlight, a silent challenge. Harris's cocky smirk faltered. Clay stiffened, hand instinctively dropping. From his belt, Malcolm's eyes swept the scene, landing on Nia first. Relief flickered across his face, quickly replaced by cold fury as he turned to the officers. "Somebody," Malcolm said, voice low and dangerous, "better explain why my wife is standing here like a suspect while you ransack her car." Silence. Nia's breath caught. This was far from over. In fact, it was only the beginning. For a moment, the street fell into a tense, suffocating silence. Detective Malcolm Brooks stood tall, shoulders squared, eyes locked onto Officer Harris. His badge glinted under the flickering streetlight, a silent testament to the authority. He wielded authority that in this moment meant nothing to the men who had been terrorizing his wife. "Somebody," Malcolm repeated, his voice sharp enough to cut glass, "better explain why my wife is standing here like a suspect while you ransack her car." Officer Harris blinked, clearly thrown off by the sudden shift in power dynamics. He squared, his shoulders trying to reclaim dominance. "Sir," he said, the word forced and bitter, "we received a report of suspicious activity involving a vehicle matching this description." Malcolm's gaze flickered to the open trunk, where Nia's neatly packed fundraiser materials now lay strewn across the pavement. Brochures were crumpled next to discarded tablecloths, and a box of children's books had been kicked over, their colorful covers now dulled by dirt and asphalt. "Suspicious activity," Malcolm echoed, voice flat. "In a silver SUV, driven by a well-dressed woman coming from a charity event. That's your story." Harris didn't flinch. "Matching the description of a vehicle involved in potential drug trafficking." Nia stiffened behind Malcolm, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Drug trafficking? Are you serious? I was handing out pamphlets for a literacy program an hour ago." Harris, didn't even look at her. His focus remained on Malcolm, like Nia's words were background noise. "Ma'am," Harris said, voice dripping with faux patience, "I need you to remain silent while we conduct our investigation." Malcolm took a deliberate step forward, placing himself squarely between Harris and his wife. "You've already conducted an unlawful search. Do you have probable cause? Did she consent to this search?" Silence. Officer Reed shifted nervously, eyes darting between Harris and Malcolm. He was younger, less seasoned, and clearly uncomfortable with how far things had escalated. But Harris? He stood his ground, jaw tightening. "That's what I thought," Malcolm snapped. "Call your supervisor." "Now." The tension was suffocating. Even the street seemed to hold its breath. Nia's heart pounded in her chest, but she said nothing, standing rigidly behind her husband. This was no longer just about her. This was a power struggle, one that could turn deadly with the wrong move. Reed hesitated, glancing at Harris, waiting for direction. Harris gave the barest shake of his head. "No, don't call it in." "No need for that," Harris muttered, voice tight. "We're almost done here." Malcolm didn't move. His eyes, cold and calculating, pinned Harris in place. "You're done when I say you're done. Call your supervisor." For the first time, Harris faltered. His face reddened, but he reached for his radio, voice taut with barely restrained anger. "Dispatch, this is Officer Harris requesting LT on site. Location, Hollow Creek and 17th. Minutes ticked by like hours. The officers stood rigid, silent, while Malcolm refused to break eye contact. Nia remained frozen, arms crossed tightly over, her chest, every muscle screaming to flee. But she knew better. Running wasn't an option, not for someone like her. Not in a world where black bodies were seen as threats first and victims second. Finally, another patrol car pulled up. A stocky, middle-aged officer with graying hair and an air of practiced authority stepped out. Lieutenant Greg Parker, his face twisted into a scowl the moment he recognized Malcolm. "Captain Brooks," Parker drawled, voice laced with false warmth. "Didn't expect to see you out here tonight. What seems to be the problem?" Malcolm didn't flinch. "The problem, Lieutenant, is your officers illegally searching my wife's vehicle, detaining her without cause and refusing her the right to contact counsel. That sound like standard procedure to you?" Parker's gaze flickered to Nia, then to the mess around her car. His scowl deepened. "We got a report. Officers followed protocol, no harm intended." Nia's fists clenched at her sides. "No harm. They humiliated me, treated me like a criminal in my own neighborhood." Parker sighed, like a man inconvenienced by paperwork. "Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be, Captain. Your wife's free to go, but Malcolm didn't move. No, we're not brushing this under the rug. I want badge numbers, body cam footage, dash cam footage, everything." Parker's lips thinned. "I'll see what I can do." "See that you do," Malcolm snapped. "Because if I find out this footage mysteriously disappears, I'll bypass internal affairs and go straight to the media. We both know how that'll play out." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Parker's face. He knew Malcolm wasn't bluffing. Finally, the lieutenant nodded. "Reed, Harris, clear out. Now." The officers hesitated, but Parker's sharp glare sent them scrambling. Nia stood frozen as Malcolm gently took her arm, guiding her toward the SUV. As they climbed in, Nia glanced back. Harris stood rigid, hands balled into fists at his sides, eyes burning with fury. "Malcolm," Nia whispered, voice tight with emotion, "they're going to come after us for this." Her husband's eyes, dark and resolute, didn't leave the road. Let them try. But was Malcolm's badge enough to shield them from what was coming? Or had they just ignited a battle they couldn't win? Comment number 1 if you believe. Nia was completely justified in standing up for herself, even at the risk of escalation. Like and subscribe if you believe no one should fear being pulled over simply because of the color of their skin. And now the real question. Did Malcolm's intervention truly end the threat? Or was this just the calm before an even bigger storm? The ride home was suffocatingly silent. Nia gripped the steering wheel like a lifeline, her knuckles pale. Malcolm sat beside her, jaw clenched so tightly it looked carved from stone. The night's events replayed in her mind on an endless loop, flashing. Lights, mocking voices, her belongings scattered like trash. The humiliation sat heavy in her chest, a toxic weight she couldn't shake. "They're not going to stop," Nia muttered, breaking the silence. "If you hadn't shown up," Malcolm cut her off, voice low and firm. "I know, but knowing didn't make it better. It didn't erase the sting of being treated like a criminal in her own neighborhood. It didn't erase Harris's sneer or Parker's dismissive tone." When they finally pulled into the driveway of their modest suburban home, Nia exhaled shakily. The house, usually a sanctuary, felt fragile tonight, like a place that could no longer keep the world's ugliness at bay. "I'll file a formal complaint first thing tomorrow," Malcolm said as they stepped inside. They crossed every line. Nia followed, slamming the door harder than she meant to. "Do you really think that'll change anything? They'll circle the wagons, protect their own like they always do." Malcolm stopped short, turning to face her. In the dim porch light, the exhaustion in his eyes was unmistakable. "I can't let this go, Nia. If I stay quiet, they win." She wanted to argue, to tell him they'd already won by stripping her of her dignity, by making her feel small. But she knew Malcolm was right. Silence was complicity, and complicity was how systems like this thrived. The next morning, Malcolm kept his promise. He filed the complaint, citing racial profiling, unlawful search, and harassment. He submitted dashcam and bodycam footage requests, already anticipating the familiar excuse: technical malfunction. Nia, determined not to be sidelined, contacted the Atlanta Civil Rights Alliance, a nonprofit known for holding law enforcement accountable. They promised support but warned, "Cases like this don't go down quietly, expect pushback." Pushback came faster than expected. That evening, as Nia left the community center after another long day, she found a bright orange parking violation stuck to her windshield. "No parking, tow zone." Her SUV was legally parked in a designated spot, one she'd used for years without issue. She glanced around. Across the street, a patrol car idled. Officer Clay sat behind the wheel, watching her. He didn't bother hiding his smug grin. Nia's hands trembled with fury as she ripped the ticket from the glass. She stormed over, ignoring every instinct screaming at her to stay silent. "Seriously?" she snapped, holding up the ticket. "This is how you retaliate? Fake citations?" Clay rolled down the window, eyes gleaming with predatory amusement. "Just doing my job, ma'am. You people always think the rules don't apply. You people." Again. Always the same poison, wrapped in professional indifference. Nia's voice shook, but her words were sharp. "I'm reporting this. Harassment, retaliation, all of it." Clay leaned out, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Report all you want. Complaints get lost, cameras fail, and witnesses, well, they tend to forget." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Nia stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. This wasn't about humiliation anymore. It was about power. A flex meant to remind her of her place. That night, Malcolm's fury was volcanic. He called Lieutenant Parker directly, bypassing the usual channels. "Your officer is stalking my wife," Malcolm snapped, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "I need to get Clay under control, or I will." Parker's response was infuriatingly casual. "Detective Brooks, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Our officers conduct routine patrols all the time." "Routine?" Malcolm's voice sharpened to a knife's edge. "Fake tickets and intimidation are routine now," Parker sighed like a man indulging a tantrum. "I'll look into it. In the meantime, I'd advise your wife to keep a low profile." The line went dead. The next escalation came 2 days later. Nia was driving home from the grocery store when the same patrol car flashed its lights behind her. Heart pounding, she pulled over, gripping the wheel so tightly her fingers ached. Clay swaggered up to the window, smug as ever. "Evening, ma'am, license and registration." Her voice wavered. "I wasn't speeding. I didn't run a light." "What's the reason for this stop?" "Routine." "Check," Clay replied, eyes glinting. "Step out of the vehicle." Nia blinked, not without cause. His smile widened. "I said step out. Now." Before she could respond, he reached for the door handle, yanking it open. Nia barely unbuckled her seatbelt before rough hands pulled her out, slamming her against the side of the SUV. "Stop resisting," Clay barked. Though Nia hadn't moved, Her groceries spilled onto the sidewalk, milk pooling on the concrete, oranges rolling into the gutter. Her phone tumbled out of her pocket, screen lighting up with Malcolm's name. Nia's world narrowed to the cold handcuffs biting into her. Wrists, the weight of Clay's knee pressing her against the car. "You think you're untouchable because you married a badge," Clay hissed in her ear. "Think again." By the time Malcolm arrived, sirens wailing, tires screeching, Nia was already in the back of the patrol car, tear-streaked and trembling. Clay stood nearby, arms crossed, smirking like a man who'd just won a prize. Malcolm exploded from his SUV, fury radiating from every pore. "Get her out of that car, now!" Lieutenant Parker, arriving moments later, surveyed the scene with thinly veiled exasperation. "Detective Brooks," he drawled, "your wife was obstructing an investigation." Malcolm's voice was deadly calm. "What investigation? Grocery shopping while black?" Parker shrugged. "We had reason to believe—" "No," Malcolm cut him off. "You had a reason to intimidate her, and you're not even hiding it anymore." He stalked toward Clay, fists clenched. It took everything in him not to cross that final line. "Uncuff her," Malcolm growled, "or I swear to God the next call I make will be to the mayor." The cuffs came off, but the damage was done. Nia collapsed into Malcolm's arms, sobbing with rage and humiliation. That night, after Malcolm filed yet another complaint, this time with internal affairs, Nia sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at her untouched dinner. "They're not going to stop," she whispered. "They'll keep pushing until one of us breaks." Malcolm nodded slowly, resolve hardening in his eyes. "Then we push back harder." The next morning, the sun rose over Atlanta like any other day. But for Nia and Malcolm Brooks, the world felt colder, sharper, like the calm before a storm. Malcolm, true to his word, spent the early hours drafting a formal complaint to Internal Affairs, detailing Officer Clay's unlawful arrest, the fabricated obstruction charge, and the clear pattern of harassment. He attached dash cam and body cam footage requests, though deep down he already knew what response he'd get. System malfunction, data corrupted, footage unavailable. It was always the same story when the victim was black and the aggressor wore blue. Nia, ever the fighter, didn't wait for official channels to fail her. She contacted Jessica Reed, a journalist she'd worked with during past community outreach projects. Jessica was sharp, fearless, and relentless when it came to exposing abuse of power. After a brief call, Jessica agreed to cover the story, provided Nia had proof. "Proof?" Nia scoffed. "They make sure there's never proof, that's the whole point." "Then we make noise until they can't ignore us," Jessica replied. "Start documenting everything, every ticket, every stop, every threat. Create a paper trail they can't bury." That afternoon, while Nia was at the community center organizing supplies for the after-school program, her phone buzzed. A notification from her Ring camera app, motion detected at front door. Frowning, she tapped the alert. The footage loaded, revealing two uniformed officers standing on her porch. Neither knocked, neither spoke. They simply stood there, looking around. One scribbled something on a notepad, while the other snapped photos of the house. Nia's stomach knotted. "Surveillance," she whispered. "They're watching us." She called Malcolm immediately. He answered on the first ring. "I'm on my way, stay inside, lock the doors." By the time Malcolm pulled into the driveway, tires screeching, the officers were gone. But they'd left a calling card, a bright orange notice of property violation, slapped on the front door. Unkempt lawn, trash bin out of alignment, potential zoning infraction. It was laughable, if it hadn't been so terrifying. "They're trying to grind us down," Malcolm muttered, crumpling the notice in his fist. "Fake tickets, harassment. Now zoning violations? They want us exhausted, distracted, scared." Nia's voice was cold. "It's working." But the worst was yet to come. 2 days later, after another long evening at the community center, Nia returned to the parking lot to find her SUV vandalized. All 4 tires slashed, the windshield spray-painted with a single word, "Traitor." Heart pounding, she stumbled, back fumbling for her phone. Before she could call Malcolm, another notification buzzed through. "Motion detected, front door." Panicked, Naya pulled up the live feed. Two shadowy figures stood on her porch. One held a can of spray paint, the other flicked a lighter, the flame dancing dangerously close to the welcome mat. "Oh my God," she breathed, fingers shaking as she dialed Malcolm. "Two men, our house, spray paint and a lighter. I'm calling 911. Don't wait," Malcolm barked. "I'm on my way. Get somewhere safe now." Naya sprinted back into the community center, locking the doors behind her. She dialed 911, voice trembling as she explained the situation. But the dispatcher's response nearly broke her. "Ma'am, officers are busy. We'll send someone when available." "They're trying to set my house on fire," Nia screamed. "Send someone now. Click." The line went dead. By the time Malcolm arrived home, tires screeching, the vandals were gone. The front door was covered in red graffiti. "Keep your mouth shut." The welcome mat smoldered, half burned but thankfully not ignited. Malcolm stood on the porch, chest heaving, rage radiating from every muscle. Nia pulled up minutes later, visibly shaking, tears pricking her eyes. "They're escalating," she whispered. "If they're willing to do this, what's next?" Malcolm's phone buzzed, an anonymous text. "Back off, Reynolds, before someone gets hurt." He showed it to Nia, her face drained of color. "We need to go public." "Fully public," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "They're not just threatening us, they're daring us to stay quiet." Malcolm nodded slowly. "Then we make sure the whole city hears us." That night, Nia sent Jessica everything. Photos of the vandalism, screenshots of the threats, the fake citations, the surveillance footage. Within hours, Jessica published an article titled, "From Traffic Stop to Target: How One Family Became the Victims of Police Retaliation." The backlash was immediate. The community, already weary of systemic abuse, rallied around the Brooks family. Justice for Nia began trending on social media. Protesters gathered outside the precinct, holding signs that read, "Who polices the police?" and "Stop retaliation now." But visibility came with a price. Late the next evening, while Malcolm was reviewing case files in his home office, his phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. "Last warning, drop it or lose everything." He showed it to Nia, who stared at the screen, pulse racing. "They're not done," she whispered, "but neither are we. Comment number 1 if you believe the Brooks family was right to fight back despite the danger. Like and subscribe if you think officers who abuse their power should face real consequences." And here's the real question. With tensions boiling over and threats becoming more dangerous, can Malcolm's badge truly protect them? Or is the system about to strike back even harder? The morning after the anonymous threat, Nia woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. Half asleep, she reached for it, expecting another news alert about their case. Instead, it was a notification from her home security app. Front door camera. Offline, her heart skipped a beat. She bolted upright, dread pooling in her stomach. Malcolm, already dressed for work, noticed her expression and frowned. "What is it?" he asked, crossing the room in 2 strides. Nia shoved the phone into his hands. "The camera's down. It was fine last night." Malcolm's face darkened. He tapped the app, flipping through the other feeds. The side yard camera was offline too. Only the backyard camera remained active, showing nothing but the morning sun glinting off dew-covered grass. "They're testing us," Malcolm muttered, jaw tightening, "seeing how close they can get before we notice." They hurried outside. The front door camera had been ripped from the wall, wires dangling like exposed nerves. The side camera's lens was smashed, glass glittering across the porch. On the welcome mat, recently replaced after the arson attempt, someone had spray-painted one word in bold, dripping red letters: "Enough." Naya stumbled back, bile rising in her throat. "They're done with warnings." Malcolm's fists clenched. "We're filing another complaint, today." But when they arrived at the precinct, the reception was colder than ever. Officers who once nodded politely now looked away. Conversations hushed as the Brookses passed, replaced by sharp, whispered exchanges. It was clear the department had closed ranks. At the Internal Affairs Office, Sergeant Carla Ruiz, one of the few allies Malcolm still trusted, met them with a grim expression. I saw the article, Ruiz said quietly, closing the door behind them. You two stirred up a hornet's nest. Parker's furious. He's calling it reckless endangerment. Claims you're putting officers at risk by inciting public hostility. Nia's mouth fell open. Hostility? We're the ones being harassed. Ruiz nodded, but her face remained tight. I believe you. But belief doesn't win cases. Evidence does. What do you have? Malcolm slid a folder across the desk. Photos of the vandalism, screenshots of the threats, documentation of every fake ticket, every stop, every violation. Ruiz flipped through the pages, expression hardening. This is enough for an official inquiry. But you know what happens next, right? The system retaliates. They already are, Malcolm said, voice cold. Push it through, Ruiz sighed, signing off on the paperwork. I'll submit it today, but watch your backs. The moment Parker gets wind of this, he'll double down. She wasn't exaggerating. That evening, as Nia left the community center after tutoring, she found her SUV towed from its usual spot. A neon impound notice flapped on a nearby post. Unauthorized parking, tow zone. Heart hammering. She called Malcolm. They took my car, they're getting bolder. Malcolm didn't even sound surprised. Stay there, I'm on my way. By the time he arrived, Nia was pacing the sidewalk, fury simmering just beneath the surface. Across the street, a patrol car idled, headlights off, engine humming quietly. Inside, Officer Clay sat watching, expression unreadable. They're trying. To break us? Nia hissed. Ticket by ticket, threat by threat, until we back down. We don't break, Malcolm muttered, squeezing her hand. We push harder. But the next blow came swiftly and viciously. The following morning, Nia received an eviction notice for the community center. The city claimed building code violations, structural issues, fire hazards, improperly stored materials. It was all fabricated, of course. The center had passed inspection just 2 months prior. Panicked, Nia called the landlord, Mr. Singh, a soft-spoken older man who'd always supported her work. I'm sorry, Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Singh said, voice laced, with regret. City inspectors came by yesterday. They said if I don't shut down immediately, I'll face daily fines. I can't afford that kind of risk. Nia's knees buckled. This is retaliation. They're using city resources to punish us. I know, Mr. Singh sighed, but knowing doesn't pay fines. I'm sorry. Malcolm arrived home that evening to find Nia sitting on the couch, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. They're shutting us down, she whispered, barely able to speak the words. The kids and the programs and gone. Malcolm sank beside her, rubbing his hands over his face. They're hitting us where it hurts. First our home, now the community. Center. Next it'll be my job. Nia blinked, dread settling like lead in her gut. They wouldn't, but Malcolm was already shaking his head. Parker plays dirty. If he can't silence us outside the system, he'll use the system itself. Sure enough, the next morning, Malcolm's precinct access was revoked. His badge still hung from his belt, but his login credentials were disabled, his emails blocked, and his cases reassigned without explanation. It wasn't an official suspension, it was worse. They were slowly erasing him, stripping away his authority piece by piece until nothing remained. Ruiz confirmed it quietly. They're boxing you out, Malcolm. Parker's pulling strings behind the scenes. He's building a case to justify suspension, fabricating misconduct charges, falsifying reports. If you don't act fast, they'll bury you. Malcolm's hands curled into fists. I won't let that happen. But the final straw came that night. While Nia was cleaning up after dinner, her phone buzzed with another security alert. Backyard motion detected. Heart racing, she rushed to the window and froze. 2 shadowy figures stood by the fence. One held a crowbar, the other a gas can. Malcolm! Nia screamed. Malcolm bolted to the door, gun drawn, but by the time he reached the yard, the men were gone. In their place, they'd left another message, spray-painted across the fence in bold, dripping red letters. Drop it or else. Nia stood in the doorway, trembling. They're not just threatening us anymore, they're promising violence. Malcolm lowered his gun, face like stone. They want war, he muttered, voice low and dangerous. They've got one. Without another. Word, he pulled out his phone and called Jessica Reed. "Tell your editor to clear the front page," Malcolm said coldly. "We're going public. Full exposure. No more warnings. No more silence." Nia watched him, heart pounding. This wasn't just about them anymore. It was about survival, about justice, about refusing to be bullied into submission. The line had been crossed. There was no turning back. The next morning, the Brooks household was a hive of quiet tension. Malcolm sat at the dining table, laptop open, eyes flicking between case files, threat documentation, and email drafts. Nia paced the kitchen, phone glued to her ear as she coordinated, with Jessica Reed, the journalist who'd vowed to shine a light on the corruption they faced. "We're going all in," Nia said, voice steeled with determination. "No more whispers, no more back channels. Publish everything, names, dates, photos, threats. If they want war, we'll fight in the daylight." Jessica hesitated. "Nia, you know what this means. Full exposure paints a target on your back. If Parker's already this bold behind closed doors, imagine what he'll do when you embarrass him publicly." Nia glanced at Malcolm, who nodded grimly. "We're past worrying about safety. Publish it. Today." By noon, the story was live. When badges become weapons, how retaliation threatens those who stand up. The article detailed everything, from the unjustified stop that started it all to the vandalism, surveillance, and threats. It didn't just name Officer Clay, Lieutenant Parker, and their enablers. It included screenshots of the anonymous threats, timestamps of falsified reports, and photos of the slashed tires, graffiti, and eviction notice from the community center. Within hours, the story exploded. Justice for Nia trended nationwide. The local news picked up the story first, but soon national outlets like CNN and NBC ran segments on police retaliation against whistleblowers. Protesters flooded the streets outside the Atlanta Police Department, holding signs that read, "Who polices the police?" and "End blue retaliation now." But the attention didn't bring relief. It brought more danger. That evening, as Malcolm drove home from a community meeting, he noticed a black SUV trailing him. No sirens, no flashing lights, just quiet, persistent pursuit. He made 3 unnecessary turns, doubling back toward downtown. But the SUV mirrored every move. Heart pounding, Malcolm pulled into a busy gas station and parked under the brightest lights he could find. The SUV slowed but didn't stop, idling at the station entrance like a predator circling prey. Malcolm didn't move. He kept his hand near his phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Finally, after an agonizing minute, the SUV pulled away, tires squealing as it disappeared down a side street. He exhaled shakily and called Nia. "They followed me. We need to get out of the house, now." Back home, Nia was already packing essentials, documents, electronics, clothes. Jessica Reed had anticipated this and arranged a safe house, a modest Airbnb under a friend's name, away from their usual routes. As they loaded the car, Malcolm's phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Thought you were smart, Brooks. You're making it worse. Back off before it's too late." He showed Nia. Her face hardened. "They don't get to win. Not this time." The safe house was small but clean, nestled in a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of town. It felt strange to hide, to be forced into the shadows for daring to seek justice. But safety for now mattered more than pride. The next blow came fast. The following morning, while Nia was reviewing security footage from the community center, her phone buzzed. "City notification, building permit revoked. Eviction finalized, effective immediately." Her breath caught. "They shut us down completely, Malcolm. The center's gone." Malcolm slammed his fist against the table, rattling the dishes. "They're dismantling. Everything we've built, piece by piece," Ruiz called minutes later, voice tight. "For you need to know, the department's officially opened an inquiry against you, Malcolm. Falsifying reports, conduct unbecoming. Parker's pushing for suspension. He's framing you as an unstable rogue officer, lashing out after disciplinary action." "That's absurd," Malcolm snapped. "Every complaint we filed was backed by evidence. Evidence that's now missing." Ruiz replied bitterly. They've purged the system. Your logs, Naya's complaints, even the footage from the original traffic stop. It's like it never happened. Naya sank onto the couch, head in her hands. They're erasing us. Our credibility. Our story. Everything. But Malcolm wasn't done fighting. He called Jessica. We're not just exposing the harassment now, we're naming the system itself. The corruption goes beyond Parker. It's in the fabric of the department. If we fall, we make sure they fall. With us. That evening, Jessica's follow-up article dropped. Retaliation at every level. How the system protects its own. It exposed not just the officers, but the internal cover-ups, the erased reports, the abuse of city resources to target dissenters. It called out the police chief, city inspectors, even the mayor's office demanding an independent federal investigation. The city exploded. Protesters now blocked the entrance to City Hall. Civil rights groups called for Lieutenant Parker's suspension and a full departmental audit. Congresswoman Lila Porter, a longtime advocate for police reform, tweeted, "This isn't just one family's fight, it's everyone's fight. It was justice for Nia, whose accountability now. But the system didn't crumble. It fought back harder." That night, while Malcolm and Naya sat reviewing footage, their Ring camera pinged. Motion detected. Front door. Malcolm pulled up the feed and froze. Two uniformed officers, badges obscured, stood at the door of the safe house. One held a manila envelope, the other rested his hand on his holstered gun. No lights, no sirens, just quiet menace. "Naya," Malcolm whispered, "get in the back, now." The doorbell rang once, twice. Then pounding fists. "Detective Brooks," one officer barked. "We've got a warrant. Open up or we're coming in." Malcolm's blood ran cold. He stepped toward the door, phone recording in his hand. "Slide the warrant under the door," he called out. "I'm not opening anything without confirmation." The officers didn't move. The pounding resumed. Nia's phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Tip from a source. Parker's pushing for your arrest. They're manufacturing charges. Get out now." Malcolm's voice dropped to a growl. "We're leaving. Grab the drive and the laptop. We'll find another way." But as they moved toward the back door, headlights flooded the yard. Another patrol car blocked the alley exit. Trapped. Comment number 1 if you believe the Brooks. Family was right to go public, even knowing the danger. Like and subscribe if you believe corrupt officers should be held accountable, no matter how high up the chain it goes. But here's the real question. With Parker tightening the noose and official channels failing them, can Malcolm and Naya escape the system's grip? Or is this the moment when the fight finally breaks them? Malcolm froze, heart pounding in his chest as the patrol car's headlights flooded the backyard. The narrow alley behind the safe house was now blocked, and the front door rattled under the weight of relentless pounding. The officers outside weren't just following protocol, they were hunting. "Detective Brooks," one of the men shouted, voice sharp with authority. "Open the damn door or we'll force entry." Naya's breath hitched as she clutched the hard drive containing every piece of evidence they'd gathered. Her eyes darted toward Malcolm, panic flickering across her face. "What do we do? We're trapped." Malcolm's mind raced. He knew how this worked. They wouldn't knock forever. If Parker had authorized this raid, it wasn't about an arrest. It was about destruction. They'd seize everything. Phones, laptops, hard drives, anything that could further expose the department. "We can't let them get the drive," Malcolm muttered, grabbing his phone and stuffing it into his jacket. He glanced toward the bathroom window, a narrow but possible escape route. "Get to the back, take the drive and go through the bathroom. I'll stall them." Nia's eyes widened. "No, I'm not leaving you here." "Nia, please," Malcolm hissed, desperation bleeding into his voice. "If they get this evidence, everything we've fought for dies. You have to protect it. I'll buy you time." The front door shuddered as one of the officers kicked it, splintering the frame. There was no time left for argument. Malcolm grabbed Nia's face, pressing a quick, fierce kiss to her forehead. "Go. Now." Tears brimmed in her eyes, but she nodded, gripping the hard drive like a lifeline. Without another word, she sprinted down the hall, disappearing into the bathroom. Malcolm turned back toward the door, adrenaline drowning out every rational thought. He flipped the deadbolt and cracked the door open just enough to see the two officers standing on the porch. Their faces were obscured by shadows, but their body language screamed aggression. "Warrant," Malcolm barked, keeping his hand visible. "Slide it under the door." The officer on the left, tall and broad-shouldered, sneered. "Officer Clay, of course it was him." "We don't need your permission, Brooks," Clay growled. "Step aside or we'll drag you out in cuffs." Malcolm stood his ground. "You have no probable cause, no legal grounds for entry. You force your way in, and you'll have a federal civil rights lawsuit on your hands before sunrise." Clay's lip curled in disdain. Big words for a man about to lose everything. From the corner of his eye, Malcolm caught a flash of movement, Nia slipping out the bathroom window, hard drive tucked under her arm. Relief flooded him, but he kept his face blank. The second officer, younger and jittery, shifted uncomfortably. He wasn't as seasoned as Clay, and the tension in his posture screamed uncertainty. "Clay," the younger cop muttered, "maybe we should wait for backup. This feels off." Clay ignored him, stepping closer to the door. "Backup's not coming. We... Finish this now." Malcolm's fingers twitched toward his phone, still recording in his pocket. "You finish this and you'll answer for it. Body cams on." Clay's smirk widened. "Malfunctioning. Unfortunate timing, huh?" Of course they were. They always were. Behind him, the sound of glass softly crunching underfoot told Malcolm that Nia had made it into the yard. Now she just had to make it past the patrol car blocking the alley. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to remain steady. "You want to talk, Clay? Let's talk. But you're not stepping foot in this house without a supervisor on site." Clay took another step forward, practically chest to chest with Malcolm now. "I don't need a supervisor to shut down a rogue cop and his troublemaking wife." Suddenly, the radio clipped to the younger officer's shoulder crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 457. Status check on warrant execution at listed location." The younger cop flinched, eyes darting toward Clay. "A 457 here. We're still securing the scene." "Copy that, 457, the dispatcher replied, voice crisp. "Be advised, Captain Reynolds has requested an update. He's en route." Malcolm's heart skipped a beat. Captain Reynolds, his former commanding officer, one of the few men in the department who hadn't turned a blind eye to corruption. If Reynolds was on his way, there was still a chance to flip the script. Clay's expression darkened. "End it now," he snapped at his partner. "We're not waiting for Reynolds." But the younger officer hesitated, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. "Clay, if the captain shows up and we've gone in without..." Shut up and follow my lead," Clay barked, reaching for the door. Malcolm braced himself, every muscle coiled to fight, when suddenly, tires screeched outside. A black SUV whipped around the corner, headlights flaring as it skidded to a stop directly behind the patrol car blocking the alley, Nia. She'd made it to the SUV, hard drive secured, and now she was flooring it down the narrow alley, tires spitting gravel as she escaped. "Damn it," Clay roared, spinning to face the commotion. "Stop that car." But it was too late. Nia was gone, speeding towards safety with the only leverage they had left. Malcolm used the distraction to slam the door shut and throw the deadbolt back into place. He stumbled away from the entrance, chest heaving, adrenaline crashing over him like a tidal wave. Clay's voice boomed from outside. "Brooks, you're done, you hear me? Done." But Malcolm didn't care. Nia was safe, the evidence was safe. And now, they had one final shot at exposing the corruption eating the department from within. As the pounding on the door resumed, Malcolm leaned against the wall, pulling out his phone to text Ruiz and Jessica. "Nia's out. Evidence secured. Tell Reynolds to get here, fast." He stared at the message for a heartbeat, then hit send. The trap had sprung. But the prey had escaped. Now it was only a matter of time before the hunters realized they'd lost control. Nia's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel as she sped down the narrow alley, heart pounding so violently she could barely hear the blaring horn of an oncoming car. The hard drive sat on the passenger seat, buckled in like a fragile child. It wasn't just metal and circuits. It was survival, proof, leverage, the only thing standing between them and complete ruin. Her phone buzzed with a message from Malcolm. "Nia's out. Evidence secured. Tell Reynolds to get here. Fast." Relief flooded her chest, but it was short-lived. In the rearview mirror, the black patrol SUV whipped around, tires screaming as it tore after her. Blue and red lights exploded to life, bathing the alley in flickering chaos. "Pull over now," a voice blared through the cruiser's loudspeaker. "You're obstructing an official investigation." Naya's breath hitched. Official investigation? This wasn't protocol. This was a hit job, sanctioned by Parker and executed by his loyal foot soldiers. They weren't after justice. They were after silence. She gritted her teeth and floored the gas. The SUV lurched forward, tires spitting gravel as she shot out onto the main road. Cars honked, drivers swerving to avoid her as she weaved through traffic, adrenaline turning her hands to ice. She needed to get to Jessica. The hard drive had to reach the press, but the police cruiser stuck to her like glue, sirens screaming. Another patrol car joined from a side street, boxing her in. Nia's pulse raced. If they stopped her now, they'd seize the drive, fabricate charges, and bury the truth forever. Her eyes darted to a side street, narrow, barely wide enough for one car. Without thinking, she yanked the wheel hard left, tires screeching as she fishtailed into the alley. Garbage cans toppled, slamming against her bumper, but she didn't slow down. "Dispatch, suspect is fleeing westbound on Carson. Request backup." The officer's voice crackled through the cruiser's radio, panic bleeding through the static. Naya's jaw clenched. Suspect? They were framing her in real time, rewriting the narrative before her very eyes. She wasn't fleeing. She was surviving. Fighting back, refusing to be another victim swallowed by a broken system. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jessica. "Safe house ready, drop drive here, GPS pinned." Nia glanced at the map. 5 blocks, she could make it. If the car held, if they didn't ram her off the road first. The first hit came seconds later. The lead patrol car nudged her rear bumper, sending her skidding sideways. She wrestled the wheel, breath ragged. A second hit followed, harder this time, metal screeching as the side mirror snapped clean off. "Stop the vehicle now," Clay's voice thundered from the cruiser behind her. Last warning, but Nia didn't stop. She couldn't. Up ahead, the street split, left toward downtown traffic, right toward the safe house. She veered right, tires screeching as she narrowly avoided a fire hydrant. The patrol car didn't hesitate. It followed, siren howling like a wounded animal. 3 blocks, 2, 1, then impact. The SUV slammed into her rear quarter panel, sending her spinning. Nia screamed as the world blurred, the hard drive tumbling to the floor. The SUV hit the curb, jolting to a violent stop. Airbags exploded, white powder filling the cabin as the horn blared relentlessly. Dazed, ears ringing, Nia fumbled for the drive. Her fingers closed around the cool metal casing just as the cruiser doors burst open. Boots thundered toward her. Out. "For the car now," Clay barked, gun drawn. Nia's breath came in ragged gasps. There was no escape, not this time, but they wouldn't get the drive. She shoved it into her jacket, zipping the pocket shut just as Clay yanked the door open. "Gotcha. Now, sweetheart," he sneered, yanking her out by the arm. Nia stumbled, knees scraping against the asphalt. "Thought you could outrun the system. Cute." He shoved her against the hood, slapping cuffs onto her wrists with cruel efficiency. The younger officer, Reed, if she remembered correctly, hovered nearby, eyes darting nervously between Clay and Nia. "Search the car," Clay snapped. "Find the drive. She's nothing without it." Reed hesitated. "Clay, she's already cuffed. Do we really need to—" "Do your damn job," Clay snarled. "Or do you want Parker thinking you've gone soft?" Reed's jaw tightened, but he moved toward the car, flashlight slicing through the smoke-filled interior. Nia's heart hammered. If he found the drive, it was over. Everything they'd risked, everything Malcolm had fought for, gone. But fate, it seemed, hadn't abandoned her yet. "Unit 457, stand down." The command cracked through the air like a whip. Clay froze, hand tightening on Nia's arm. Down the street, another patrol SUV screeched to a halt, lights flashing. Captain Reynolds stepped out, badge gleaming under the streetlights, face carved. "From stone, release her, now." Reynolds' voice was ice. Clay's face twisted in disbelief. "Captain, she was fleeing an active investigation. We had probable cause, probable cause." Reynolds cut him off, stepping closer. "For what?" Driving while black? Because that's the only charge that seems to stick around here. Clay's grip tightened. Sir, with all due respect, you don't get to say respect while you've got an innocent woman cuffed and bleeding, Reynolds snapped, eyes blazing. Take those cuffs off, officer. That's an order. Reed, still standing by the wrecked SUV, took a hesitant step back. His flashlight dipped. Captain, we didn't find the drive, just flyers and personal stuff. Clay's face darkened. She must have ditched it. Damn it, Reed, you should have— Enough! Reynolds barked. Uncuff her, now! With visible reluctance, Clay clicked open the cuffs and Naya stumbled free, cradling her scraped wrists. Her jacket, still zipped, pressed tightly against her chest, the hard drive safe within its folds. You okay, Mrs. Brooks? Reynolds asked, voice softening as he stepped between her and Clay. Nia nodded shakily. I've been better. Go, Reynolds said quietly. Get to Jessica, I'll handle this. Clay's face twisted with rage. You can't just let her walk away. Watch me, Reynolds shot back. And if you so much as look at her wrong again, I'll have your badge on my desk by sunrise. Nia didn't wait. She staggered toward the corner, barely able to keep her balance. Behind her, she heard Reynolds tearing into Clay, voice sharp and unrelenting. But none of that mattered. The hard drive was safe. They still had a chance. Comment number 1 if you think Nia was right to risk everything for the truth. Like and subscribe if you believe the Brooks family's fight for justice is far from over. But here's the real question. Now that Nia escaped with the evidence, will exposing it finally bring justice, or will the system strike back even harder? Nia stumbled down the dimly lit street, one hand clutching the hard drive inside her jacket, the other pressed against her bruised ribs. Her legs felt like lead, adrenaline draining from her body, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Every shadow looked like an officer. Every passing car sounded like another patrol. She couldn't stop, not now. Jessica's safe house was 3 blocks away, 3 blocks of cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, and empty storefronts. It might as well have been 3 miles. Her phone was dead, the screen shattered from the crash. There was no way to call for help. Behind her, the angry shouts between Captain Reynolds and Officer Clay faded into the distance. Reynolds had bought her a window, but it wouldn't stay open long. Parker would know soon enough. And when he did, the gloves would come off. Nia turned down a narrow alley, chest heaving, heart pounding in her ears. She couldn't afford to get caught, not with everything on the line. The hard drive was the last piece of leverage they had, the proof of systemic corruption, falsified reports, and targeted harassment. Without it, they were just another black family chewed up and spit out by a broken system. A pair of headlights swung around the corner, illuminating the alley in harsh white light. Nia froze, eyes wide, before diving behind a dumpster. The car idled for a moment, engine rumbling like a predator waiting to pounce. Then, mercifully, it moved on. She didn't move until the tail lights disappeared around the corner. Get to. Jessica, drop the drive, expose them. That's all that matters now. Nia forced herself to stand, biting back a cry as her ankle protested. The crash had done more damage than she realized, but she couldn't stop. Not now. The safe house came into view, a modest duplex with drawn curtains and a single porch light flickering weakly. Relief washed over her like a tidal wave. She staggered toward the front door, fist raised to knock when she saw it. A black patrol SUV, parked across the street. Lights off, engine running. Her heart seized. They found it. They found her. Before she could react, the front door swung open, and Jessica appeared, eyes wide with alarm. Nia, get inside now. Nia didn't hesitate. She bolted up the steps, Jessica yanking her inside just as the SUV's doors burst open. 2 men in plain clothes, officers no doubt, rushed toward the house, but the door slammed shut in their faces. Jessica locked the deadbolt, breathing hard. I saw them circling the block 15 minutes ago. Thought they might be watching me, not you. Her gaze dropped to Nia's jacket, where the bulge of the hard drive was unmistakable. You got it? Nia nodded, pulling the drive free with trembling hands. We need to upload it, now, before they break down the door. Jessica didn't waste a second. She grabbed her laptop from the kitchen table, fingers flying across the keys as she booted up her secure server. This connection's encrypted, they can't trace it. Just give me 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like an eternity. Outside, the plainclothes officers pounded on the door. "Atlanta PD, open up, or we're coming in." Jessica glanced up, eyes sharp. "They don't have a warrant." "They can't force entry without one." Nia swallowed hard. Since when has that ever stopped them? As if on cue, one of the men moved to the window, flashlight slicing through the curtains. Jessica cursed under her breath and pulled Nia toward the back of the house. "Upload's at 60%, we can't stay here. Once it's live, we move." The hard drive hummed quietly as files transferred. Video footage of harassment, falsified reports, and internal emails exposing the cover-up. Evidence that couldn't be ignored. Evidence that could dismantle careers. Maybe even Parker's. 75%, Jessica muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. "Just a little longer." The front door rattled violently. The officers were done waiting. Nia's heart hammered in her chest as the hinges groaned under the assault. 85%. Jessica grabbed her phone, dialing Reynolds. "Oh, we need backup now, they're breaching the safe house." 90%. The first crack echoed through the house as the doorframe splintered. The deadbolt held, but barely. Nia backed toward the kitchen, eyes darting toward the back door. 95%. Another impact. The door buckled, wood snapping like brittle twigs. The officers outside weren't just here to arrest, they were here to erase. 98%. Jessica's voice broke as the final hit shattered the frame. The door burst inward, and the officers stormed inside, guns drawn. "On the ground now," one of them barked, training his weapon on Nia. "Hands where I can see them." Nia froze, arms slowly raising. The hard drive lay on the table, the transfer bar flashing 99%. Just one more second. Jessica didn't blink. She slammed the laptop shut, yanking the drive free and shoving it into Nia's hands. "Run, don't look back." "Jessica, no," Nia gasped, but it was too late. Jessica stepped between her and the officers, hands raised, voice cold. "No warrant, no entry. This is illegal and you damn well know it." The lead officer sneered. "Lady, you're obstructing an investigation. Step aside or we'll charge you too." But Jessica didn't move. "You're already breaking the law. What's one more crime to add to the list?" It was all the distraction Nia needed. She spun on her heel and bolted through the kitchen, feet barely touching the ground. Behind her, she heard Jessica shout, "Run, Nia, get it out!" followed by the sickening crack of someone being shoved against the wall. Nia didn't look back. She burst out the back door, lungs burning as she sprinted down the alley. Every footstep echoed like a gunshot. She cradled the hard drive against her chest, refusing to let it go. Sirens wailed in the distance, but she didn't stop. The world blurred around her, fences, dumpsters, flickering lights. She ducked into a side street, heart threatening to explode. Somewhere behind her, tires screeched and angry voices shouted her name. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Jessica had sacrificed her freedom to buy Nia a chance. Malcolm had stood his ground against Clay to protect her escape. Now it was on Nia to finish what they'd started. As she reached the edge of the neighborhood, she spotted a familiar black SUV pulling up fast. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought it was Clay. Another trap. But then the window rolled down and Captain Reynolds' stern face appeared. "Get in." Nia didn't hesitate. She dove into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut as Reynolds floored the gas. The SUV rocketed forward, tires squealing as they left the neighborhood behind. "You got it?" Reynolds demanded, eyes flicking toward the hard drive clutched in her hands. Nia nodded, breathless. "It's all here. Everything." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Then we don't stop until the whole damn world sees it." The safe house was gone, Jessica was gone. But the evidence, the truth, it was alive, and now it was unstoppable. The SUV sped down the deserted streets, streetlights flashing across Nia's pale, sweat-slicked face. She gripped the hard drive like a lifeline, the plastic casing warm from the heat of her palm. Captain Reynolds' jaw was set in stone, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. The police scanner in the dashboard crackled with urgent chatter. "Unit 457, Suspect fleeing on foot. Last seen heading east on Peachtree. Officers in pursuit. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Nia wasn't a civilian to protect. She was a target. A loose end that had to be tied up before the story broke. "Where's Malcolm?" Nia rasped, throat raw from running. "Did they arrest him?" Reynolds didn't take his eyes off the road. "Last I heard, he was holding the line at the house. Clay and Parker were circling, but I pulled rank to stall them. If they get to him before this goes live..." He didn't finish the sentence. The implication hung heavy in the air. Parker wasn't trying to make an arrest. He was trying to erase evidence, including the people holding it. "We can't just upload it," Nia said, voice trembling. "If they shut down the servers or scrub the data, it's over. We need the media, someone untouchable." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Already called in a favor. Cynthia Park from Channel 6. She's on standby. If we get this drive to her, it hits the 6 o'clock news, live uncut." Nia exhaled shakily. "And if we don't?" Reynolds's gaze flicked to the rearview mirror. Headlights glimmered in the distance. "Then we don't get a second chance." The SUV swerved onto the freeway, tires screeching. Nia clutched the door handle as Reynolds floored the gas, weaving between cars like a man possessed. The hard drive thumped against her chest with every jolt. Then the scanner crackled again. "All units, be advised. Suspect vehicle identified. Black SUV, Georgia plate 3X4J92. Authorized for emergency stop. Repeat, stop by any means necessary." Nia's breath caught. "They're coming for us," Reynolds grunted. "Let 'em try." Blue and red lights flared behind them. Not one, not two. 3 patrol cars closing in fast. Sirens screamed through the night, drowning out the city's hum. Reynolds glanced at Nia. "Hold on." He yanked the wheel hard right, sending the SUV careening across 3 lanes of traffic and down an exit ramp. Horns blared, brakes screeched, but Reynolds didn't slow. The tires barely gripped the asphalt as they barreled through a red light, narrowly missing a delivery truck. Nia's heart pounded in her ears. This wasn't just a chase, it was a hunt, and the hunters were armed, angry, and out for blood. "They'll cut us off," Reynolds muttered, scanning the GPS. "Parker's got half the damn precinct under his thumb. We need a new route." Nia's eyes darted to the screen. The Channel 6 station was only 8 miles away, but the freeway was a death trap. Every exit would be blocked within minutes. "Surface streets," she blurted. "Through the industrial district. It's longer, but they won't expect it." Reynolds didn't argue. He veered off the exit, tires screeching as they hit the cracked pavement of a side street lined with abandoned warehouses. The patrol cars hesitated, caught between orders and instinct, but one didn't. Clay's SUV. It roared around the corner, lights off, moving like a shark through dark water. Nia's blood ran cold. This wasn't an arrest. It was an ambush. "We're not outrunning him," Reynolds growled, glancing at the hard drive in Nia's lap. "You ready to fight for this?" Nia's jaw clenched. "Always." The first hit came fast. Clay's SUV rammed their rear bumper, sending them fishtailing across the slick pavement. Reynolds gritted his teeth, wrestling the wheel. "Brace," he barked. The second hit was harder. Metal screamed as the side of the SUV scraped against a chain-link fence, sparks flying. The hard drive slipped from Nia's hands, clattering to the floor. "Get it!" Reynolds shouted, eyes locked on the road. Nia lunged, fingers closing around the drive just as another impact sent her sprawling against the door. The seatbelt bit into her shoulder, but she didn't let go. Up ahead, an intersection loomed. Cross. Traffic streamed past, oblivious to the chaos barreling toward them. Reynolds' jaw tightened. "We're blowing it." "What?" Nia's eyes widened. "We'll get killed." "We're dead if we stop," Reynolds snapped. "Hold on." The SUV rocketed forward, headlights slicing through the night. Horns blared, tires screeched, and for a terrifying moment, Nia was sure they wouldn't make it. But they did. The SUV blasted through the intersection, missing a city bus by inches. Clay wasn't so lucky. His cruiser swerved to follow, but the bus slammed into his side, metal crumpling like paper. The impact spun the cruiser into a fire hydrant, sending water geysering into the air. Nia gasped. "Is he?" "Doesn't matter." Reynolds cut in, eyes fixed ahead. We've got 5 minutes tops, they'll send more. The Channel 6 tower rose in the distance, its red lights blinking like a beacon. Safety, truth, accountability. But as they sped toward salvation, the radio crackled again. All units, suspect vehicle approaching Media District. Orders from Lieutenant Parker. No holds barred. Stop them, now. Reynolds' face darkened. He's pulling every string he's got. Nia's fingers dug into the hard drive. Then we cut the strings. The final stretch was a gauntlet. Patrol cars swarmed from side streets, tires screeching as they formed a blockade outside the news station. Officers poured onto the sidewalk, hands on weapons, faces set in grim determination. "They're not letting us through," Reynolds muttered, slowing the SUV. "Damn cowards." Nia's breath caught as she spotted something behind the line of patrol cars, a figure standing on the steps of the news station, phone raised. Jessica, bruised, bloodied, but alive. Their eyes met across the chaos. Nia didn't think. She acted. "Stop." The car. Reynolds' head snapped toward her. "What? Stop the damn car!" He slammed the brakes, tires squealing as the SUV skidded to a halt. Nia didn't wait. She threw the door open, clutching the hard drive to her chest, and ran. "Brooks, get back here!" Reynolds shouted, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The world narrowed to a tunnel, the flashing lights, the shouting officers, the pounding of her own heartbeat. Jessica's voice rose above the chaos. "Nia, here, hurry!" Nia sprinted across the pavement, feet barely touching the ground. An officer lunged for her, but she ducked, adrenaline propelling her forward. Another reached for his taser. Too slow. 10 feet. 5. Jessica grabbed her arm and yanked her inside the station, slamming the glass door shut, just as 2 officers collided with it. The lock clicked into place. They were inside, safe. Breathless, Nia shoved the hard drive into Jessica's hands. "Upload it. Leave broadcast. No edits. Now." Jessica didn't hesitate. She grabbed the drive and sprinted toward the control room, shouting orders to the bewildered technicians. Outside, Reynolds stood beside the SUV, hands raised as officers surrounded him. But his face, calm, defiant, told Nia everything she needed to know. They'd won the battle, but the war, that was just beginning. Inside the Channel 6 station, chaos erupted. Jessica sprinted through the hallway, clutching the hard drive like a lifeline, Nia hot on her heels. Technicians glanced up from their monitors, confused by the frantic energy pouring into the room. "We need to go live now," Jessica barked, waving the drive in the air. "No delay, no edits, full broadcast. Can you patch into the 6 o'clock slot?" The lead producer, a middle-aged man with thinning hair and wary eyes, hesitated. "Jessica, that's suicide. We need clearance from the station director. Legal, corporate. By the time you get clearance, they'll have wiped the drive and arrested everyone in this room," Jessica snapped, slamming the hard drive onto the desk. "Do you want to be the guy who killed the biggest corruption story this city's ever seen?" The producer paled, eyes flicking to the newsroom floor below, where reporters were already gathering for the evening broadcast. After a beat, he nodded sharply. "Patch it through to the control room. We'll override the feed." Nia exhaled shakily. The clock on the wall read 5:57 p.m., 3 minutes until the top of the hour, 3 minutes until the world saw the truth, or everything fell apart. Outside, the scene was unraveling. Through the station's glass doors, Nia could see Captain Reynolds standing tall, surrounded by officers. His hands were still raised, but his expression was calm, resolute. He wasn't backing down. Clay had pulled himself from the wreckage of his cruiser, face contorted in fury. His uniform was torn, his badge askew, but his weapon was drawn, pointed directly at Reynolds. "Stand down, Captain," Clay barked. "This isn't your fight anymore." Reynolds didn't flinch. "Funny. Looked like my fight when you ran my people off the road and broke into private property without a warrant." Clay's face twisted, finger tightening on the trigger. "Last warning. Walk away, or I'll drop you right here." Inside, Nia's breath caught. Reynolds stood alone, unarmed, against a corrupt system with nothing left to lose. One wrong move, one twitch, and they'd kill him in broad daylight, badge or not. Jessica's voice cut through the tension. "It's live. We're broadcasting now. Nia's heart leapt into her throat. She spun toward the control room monitors, where the Channel 6 logo dissolved into the grainy opening frame of the footage from the hard drive. The newsroom floor fell silent. Reporters froze mid-conversation, eyes widening as the truth unfolded across the screens. First, the body cam footage, the stop, the illegal search, the mocking laughter, as Clay and his team rifled through Nia's belongings without cause. The audio was clear, unmistakable. You people always think you're untouchable. Run her plates, bet she's got something to hide. The newsroom erupted into stunned whispers, but the footage kept rolling. Dashcam logs followed, timestamps showing how officers had trailed Nia for over 30 minutes before pulling her over. Internal memos flashed across the screen next, emails between Parker and Clay, authorizing priority surveillance on Malcolm Brooks without justification. Then came the kicker, an audio recording from Reynolds' own phone, his voice steady but furious, speaking to Parker the night after the first arrest. "You know this is illegal, Parker. Harassment, retaliation. If you don't back off, this'll blow up in your face." Parker's response, cool and dismissive. "Go ahead, Reynolds. Blow the whistle. By the time anyone cares, the evidence will be gone, and so will your career." The newsroom froze. The words echoed through the speakers like a death knell, stripping away every ounce of plausible deniability. The clock hit 6:05 p.m. Across the city, television screens flickered as households, bars, and shops tuned into what should have been the evening news. Instead, they got war phones buzzed. Social media exploded. Dr. Justice for Nia shot to the top of trending hashtags within minutes, followed by "Expose Parker" and "Reynolds was right." Local reporters scrambled to cover the breaking story, while national outlets picked up the feed, amplifying it to millions. But outside the station, the police line held firm. Parker had arrived, face twisted in fury as he barked orders into his radio. Officers formed a blockade, shields raised as though preparing for a riot. Only the riot wasn't coming. The truth already was the riot. Inside the station, Jessica slammed her hands on the console. "Keep it running. Loop it every hour if you have to." The producer, sweat glistening on his brow, nodded. "It's out there now, no stopping it." Nia sagged against the desk, legs buckling beneath her. They'd done it. The evidence was public, irrefutable, unstoppable. But relief was short-lived. Outside, Parker stepped forward, voice amplified by a bullhorn. "Nia Brooks, Captain Reynolds, step out of the building with your hands up. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice and dissemination of classified materials." Nia's blood ran cold. Obstruction? The drive contained evidence of their crimes, but now they were twisting the narrative, painting her as the criminal. Again. Reynolds, still standing tall in the middle of the street, shook his head slowly. "You're done, Parker. The whole world's watching now. You think you can bury this under another false charge?" Parker's face flushed crimson. "I don't care who's watching. This ends tonight." Nia's breath hitched as Clay moved beside. Parker, gun still in hand. His eyes gleamed with something darker than duty, something personal. He wanted blood. Her blood. Malcolm's. Reynolds. It didn't matter. "Jessica," Nia whispered, "we have to get Reynolds inside. They'll kill him to bury this story." But Jessica's face was pale, eyes glued to the monitors. "It's already too late." The feed flickered. A second angle popped up, a live drone stream broadcasting the standoff outside the station. Someone, probably another journalist, had taken to the skies, ensuring there would be no blackout. No erasure this time. The world wasn't just watching, it was bearing witness. Reynolds seemed to realize it too. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his hands and took a step forward. "Parker," he called, voice steady. "You want to end this? Fine. Arrest me. But you touch her." He jerked his chin toward the station. "And every outlet from here to DC will be playing this footage on repeat until your pension turns to dust." Parker hesitated. For the first time that night, doubt flickered across his face. Then the bullhorn crackled again, but it wasn't Parker speaking. "This is Mayor Richardson. All units, stand down immediately. I repeat, stand down. Every head snapped toward the end of the block, where a sleek black sedan had just screeched to a halt. Mayor Amelia Richardson, flanked by 2 aides and a furious-looking police commissioner, stormed toward the barricade, phone still in hand. "What the hell is going on here?" the mayor demanded, eyes blazing. "I've got CNN, MSNBC, and half of Congress calling my office, asking why Atlanta PD looks like it's staging a military coup against civilians." Parker's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. "Mayor, we were securing what?" Richardson snapped, jabbing a finger toward the drone camera overhead. "Your career, because that's the only thing you're protecting right now." Silence, thick, unbearable. Finally, the mayor turned to the commissioner. "Get these men out of here, now, before this city burns to the ground." The officers hesitated. Then slowly they lowered their weapons, one by one. Clay was the last to drop his aim, eyes locked on Nia through the glass. But he dropped it, and just like that, the siege was over. Inside, Nia's knees gave out. Jessica caught her before she hit the floor, both women shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. The newsfeed kept rolling, reporters breathless as they narrated the unraveling of Parker's power in real time. Outside, Reynolds exhaled, shoulders slumping with exhaustion. He met Nia's gaze through the glass, lips quirking in the faintest smile. "You did it," Jessica whispered, voice choked with emotion. "You really did it." Nia didn't answer. She just clutched the edge of the desk, tears burning in her eyes. As the weight of survival finally crashed down, they'd won this round. But the war, it was far from over. The tension outside Channel 6 slowly unraveled as officers holstered their weapons and the flashing lights dimmed. The mayor's sharp commands hung in the air, a reminder of the chaos barely avoided. Parker stood frozen, disbelief etched into every line of his face as the commissioner's hand landed heavily on his shoulder. "Lieutenant Parker," the commissioner said coldly, "turn in your badge and weapon. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately." Parker's face twisted with fury. "This is absurd. They're criminals. They leaked classified evidence." But the words sounded hollow, even to him. The world had seen the footage. Every news station, every social media platform, every household in America was now a witness. The usual playbook, deny, deflect, destroy, had failed spectacularly. Reynolds stepped forward, gaze steady. "The only criminals here," he said quietly, "are the ones who thought a badge made them untouchable." Parker's mouth opened for one last protest, but the commissioner didn't wait. He nodded to 2 officers who stepped forward, wrists stiff with hesitation. "Cuff him." The click of handcuffs echoed through the street like a gunshot. Parker flinched, not from pain but from the humiliation. The same humiliation he'd inflicted on countless others without a second thought. Clay, watching from the sidelines, slowly backed away. His hand hovered near his holster, eyes darting, between Parker and Reynolds. For a moment it seemed like he might try something reckless, but then his radio crackled with a dispatcher's voice. "All units, stand down. Internal affairs en route. Do not engage." The fight drained from Clay's face. He wasn't brave without backup, without Parker, without the system shielding him. He spat on the pavement, turned and melted into the dispersing crowd, another predator retreating into the shadows. Nia stood inside the station, breathless, watching it all unfold through the glass. Her grip on the edge of the desk tightened until her knuckles turned white. They'd won, at least for now, but the victory tasted bitter, laced with exhaustion and loss. Jessica, still holding the hard drive, exhaled shakily. "It's done," she whispered, almost like she couldn't believe it. "We actually did it." Nia didn't answer, her gaze locked on Reynolds, who stood tall amid the wreckage, bruised but unbowed. He caught her eye through the window, nodding once, a silent acknowledgement of the cost they'd both paid. But even as the sirens faded and the news crews swarmed to capture the aftermath, reality came crashing down. The footage had aired, yes. The truth was out. But Parker was just one head of a hydra. Cutting him down didn't dismantle the system that had protected him for so long. Jessica seemed to read Nia's thoughts. "You know they'll regroup, right? There'll be another Parker, another Clay." The system's already spinning this as one bad apple. She glanced at the monitors, where talking heads were already debating the isolated incident narrative. They're circling the wagons. Naya's jaw clenched. Then we keep fighting. We don't stop until the whole damn tree comes down. Reynolds finally entered the station, moving stiffly like every muscle ached. He nodded to Jessica, then turned to Naya. IA's rounding up the rest of Parker's crew, he said quietly. Morrison, Clay, even some brass higher up who signed off on those surveillance orders. But it won't hold unless the pressure stays on. Nia nodded, heart heavy. They'll try to bury it once the headlines cool. Which is why we don't let them, Reynolds replied. We've got the attention now. We use it. Rally the community. Demand real oversight. Not just another internal review that ends with a slap on the wrist. Jessica tapped her phone, pulling up the live feed from Channel 6's website. Thousands of comments flooded the screen, outrage boiling over into action. Look at this, she murmured, holding out the phone. Justice for Nia. Dismantle the blue wall. People aren't just angry, they're organizing. This could be the tipping point. But Nia's gaze drifted back to the window where paramedics loaded someone onto a stretcher. Not Parker, not Clay, Malcolm. Her heart seized. Oh my God, Malcolm! Without another word, she sprinted outside, ignoring Jessica's calls. The adrenaline that had fueled her all night drained away, leaving cold dread in its place. She found Malcolm conscious but pale, his head wrapped in gauze, blood seeping through the bandage. A paramedic steadied him as he tried to sit up. I'm fine, he muttered, voice slurred. Just a graze, but Nia saw the truth in his eyes. He'd been caught in the chaos, defending the house while she escaped with the hard drive. And now he was paying for it. This isn't fine, Nia snapped, tears pricking her eyes. You almost died for this, Malcolm. For what? One corrupt cop in cuffs while the rest reload? Malcolm's bruised face twisted into a tired smile. For the kids at the community center, for the next driver they pull over, for the folks who never get a camera on them when they're stopped for suspicious activity. He winced, gripping her hand. We didn't win the war, but we took the hill. That's something. Reynolds stepped forward, his face grim. He's right. The system won't fix itself. But now they know we're watching. Fighting back, they won't come for you quietly next time. They'll think twice. Nia swallowed hard, heart pounding. The price they'd paid was steep. Sleepless nights, broken trust, lives nearly lost. But the alternative? Silence, complicity, surrender. That wasn't an option. Jessica joined them, phone still buzzing with alerts. The mayor's calling for an independent civilian oversight board. Real power this time, not just a rubber stamp. It's not everything, but it's a start. Naya glanced at Reynolds, then Malcolm, then the city stretching out before them, battered, but unbowed. No more starts, she said quietly. We finish this, every case reopened, every crooked cop exposed. We don't stop until justice isn't just a headline, it's the norm. Reynolds nodded, a rare smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Then, let's get to work. The sun rose slowly over Atlanta, casting long shadows across the battered streets. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, Nia didn't feel powerless. She felt something stronger, determined. They'd faced the system's worst, survived its retaliation, exposed its lies, and now they were the ones. Writing the story, not victims, not fugitives, warriors. The war raged on, but so did they. The story of Nia Brooks, Captain Reynolds, and Malcolm isn't just about one woman pulled over for no reason. It's about the deep, systemic rot within institutions meant to protect, but often weaponized against the very people they claim to serve. It's about power unchecked, truth suppressed, and the high cost of standing up when silence feels safer. Nia's journey exposed more than corrupt cops. It revealed how easily the system closes ranks to protect its own, sacrificing truth, and lives along the way. Parker, Clay, and Morrison weren't anomalies. They were symptoms of a larger disease, a culture where accountability is the exception, not the rule. But this story also proved something just as powerful. Resistance works. When the marginalized speak up, when communities rally, when the truth sees daylight, the walls of oppression crack. It's slow, painful, and often dangerous, but it's possible. Nia didn't win because she had power. She won because she refused to surrender her voice, even when the system tried to silence her with threats, violence, and lies. And she didn't stand alone. People like Reynolds, Malcolm, Jessica, and countless others made it clear. Solidarity is stronger than fear, but the battle isn't over. For every Parker arrested, another rises to take his place. Policies shift, oversight boards form, but real change demands constant vigilance. The system counts on fatigue, on people giving up, once the headlines fade. So the question now is, what would you do in Nia's place? Would you risk everything to expose injustice, knowing the system would retaliate? Or would the fear of losing everything force you into silence? Comment number 1. If you believe Nia was right to fight back, no matter the danger. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you believe the fight for justice is far from over, and that together we can finish it. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and never stop fighting for what's right. See you in the next story.